notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel, one of the most exciting YouTube channels going. I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda today, please. Mayor Law, thank you.
Just just a request for addition to the agenda, a mayor's report between 4 and 5, please.
Great. So I'll move to add the mayor's report through those sections. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. All in favor? Great. Amended adoption of agenda. Could I have someone move adoption of the minutes, please? Great. Seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Great. Nikki, is there anyone signed up for public comment on agenda items today?
Thank you, Chair. There is no one signed up for question and answer, public comment, sorry. And I will call once, I will call a second time, and I will call thrice, and there are no comments.
Great, thank you, Ms. Best. Mayor Law, would you like
to? Thank you, Councillor Stere. So I did request this addition to the agenda, the mayor's report, to just to acknowledge the discovery of the 215 children's remains that were discovered on the grounds of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School. And many of you will notice the flag has been lowered to half-mast, and that is in recognition of this terrible tragedy, and also to recognize that this is not just an isolated example, but this is something that has happened across Canada, and certainly in our own communities very closely. And so we want to join the Kamloops and Tla-o-qui-aht community and the survivors and others across Canada and in our own communities whose family members were displaced to these institutions. And we want to share with them in their grief, and we recognize and honor the lives of the lost children. And so to go further, I think we'd like to call for a minute of silence. And perhaps I don't have my clock on here, but I'm going to go ahead and count out a minute of silence. Thank you. I would like to say that as we move forward, the flag will remain at half-mast in conjunction with the federal half-mast orders. And this is something that that we will carry on dealing with as a community and as a council, as a district. Thank you, Councillor Stere.
Thank you, Mayor Law. Appreciate the words. We now have a delegation from Jennifer Price Francis from Nectar Design regarding the Tofino Pavilion.
Thank you, Chair Stere. This is Nikki speaking. I'm just going to promote Jennifer to panelists now. Jennifer, you should be able to share your screen, and we have a timer here for 15 minutes. So if you get close to the end, I will just pop in and give you a 2-minute warning.
Okay, great. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, host disabled participants share screening. Can we get that undone? It still won't let me share the screen. Is that possible to get?
You should be able now, but maybe
there
it
we go.
just takes a second.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Okay, so let's just okay. Oh, it just wants to keep sharing that, so I'm going to do this. Okay, seems to be frozen here. There we go. Okay, well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for providing the time for us to present this exciting project. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nations. I am Jennifer Price Francis, and I have the honor to present the Tofino Pavilion, Tofino's open air, outdoor recreation and event space. Before I dive into the details of the project, let's first start on how this project came to life. So the Tofino Pavilion was conceived through a true grassroots effort. The project was started with a few locals looking for an attainable solution to the lack of weather-protected recreation and event space in town. The project quickly grew into a wide-reaching and well-supported concept that all aspects of our community began to rally behind. We were not the first to think this. When we started to prepare for this presentation, we gathered quotes from the OCP, the District's Strategic Planning Report, the Parks and Recreation Management Plan, the Arts and Culture and Heritage Action Plan, and the Civic Hub Study. We pulled quotes from newspaper articles and campaign pledges, but to include all of them would have taken the entire presentation, which speaks volumes to the need and urgency of a project like this. So why is a covered recreation space so important? Well, it rains a lot, we all know, on the coast. On average, we have 208 days of rain a year. We live in a temperate rainforest, and rainy days are just a part of who we are on the West Coast. Weather-protected spaces are essential to keep consistent and robust recreation and events programming alive. We also have early sunsets, which limit outdoor recreation during the fall, winter, and spring, the times that we need it the most. We are also hardy West Coast people. Being outside in the elements is a part of who we are. An open air facility isn't just a feasible alternative to an indoor space, it's a desirable option for many sports and event types. With temperatures that rarely dip below freezing during the winter, our temperate climate is well suited for this type of structure. We envision this outdoor recreation space to work in tandem with a future indoor facility, and a robust outdoor playing surface will allow heavy use sports such as ball hockey, roller derby, to continue after typical indoor recreation moves to a future indoor facility. So what is the Tofino Pavilion? The Tofino Pavilion is a 7,400 square foot recreation and events pavilion. It's a summer sports tournament location. It's an event location for pop-up markets and outdoor concerts. It's the winter spot for families to shoot hoops together, play pickup games, and gather outside when cabin fever has set in. At the heart of it, the Tofino Pavilion is a community hub for the West Coast. It's a welcoming space for community to gather and share experiences. It's a place for walls to be broken down and bridges to be rebuilt. Memories are made around youth sports tournaments, rec league basketball, and impromptu badminton games. Without a consistent space for these events to happen, we start to lose out on what makes Tofino so special. And that's the end of the road community that we all fell in love with. I don't mean to wax poetic, but the situation is critical. Every year, countless numbers of families move away from this town for towns with better amenities and recreation programs for their families. There's a brain drain happening in our town, and we're at the tipping point. The community is pleading for these essential spaces to be created. Understandably, a $7 million indoor recreation facility just isn't feasible currently. But the dire need for recreation space still exists, and we need something attainable now. So enough of the sales pitch. Let's get into the details about the pavilion. So physically, the Tofino Pavilion is a large roof covering a 71 feet by 110 feet concrete seating and playing surface area. The roof will cover a court area with an attached covered spectators and players seating area. The roof will be a mixture of metal, opaque, acrylic panels, and solar panels. The framing of the structure will be a mix of steel and wood, and the playing surface will be reinforced concrete with the option to upgrade to a specialized court surface. The court will be surrounded by removable players' boards for ball sports. It'll be fully lighted with high performance LED lights, and will also include a conditioned storage shed for various recreation equipment storage. The pavilion will include a full solar system and rain catchment system to create a net zero building that requires little to no energy input. Environmentally, an open air, unheated structure is the most sustainable and climate friendly way to build. Who would use the pavilion? We have this nice covered, weather protected space. Well, the possibilities are really endless, but to name a few, we can fit in tennis, badminton, shuffleboard, pickleball, recreational programming as martial arts, skateboarding, basketball, roller hockey, volleyball, roller derby, indoor soccer, sports tournaments, and school events. In fact, a lot of time has gone into the thought, and a lot of time and thought has already gone into an appropriately sized playing court. This is the suggested gymnasium size from the 2015 Recreation Feasibility Study. Beyond sports, the pavilion can be used for cultural events, pop-up markets, concerts, festivals, and workshops. The space can be rented out for private events and weddings to offset its yearly maintenance costs. Also, if located by the community hall, the structure could function as an overflow gathering space for disaster evacuations. So speaking of locations, where do we propose for this to go? So where could something of this size fit? Well, our first priority is to get this roof raised. With guidance from district staff, multiple locations could be established for the project. After much background research into past proposals and feasibility reports, the community hall site location checks off many boxes. It has limited sound and light pollution to residential neighborhoods. It's already a central community hub within the community hall, and the outdoor recreation space would complement the community hall nicely. Feasibility reports on similar size structures have already been completed. The Tofino Pavilion is an achievable community first project. The focus has always been an achievable project to address the immediate issues facing our community today. We are all acutely aware of the budget constraints facing the district and the likelihood that an indoor facility will not be feasible for the next 5 to 10 years. To make this project a reality, we need to work together as a community, look to private funding, public grants, and community-based fundraising. We expect the structure to cost around 1.3 million. Funding is anticipated to be collaborative with both private and public donations, as well as public grant opportunities. With a location established, we anticipate 70% of the overall cost will be covered through private local donations. A recent infrastructure grant called the Healthy Communities Initiative is awarding up to $250,000. The grant fits perfectly within this project, but the deadline to apply is June 25th. Possible coordination with sports associations and disaster response grants are an option. Local Ted Hurst has already generously pledged $200,000 to get the project off the ground. He has also covered all initial costs that include design, pricing, engineering, and the cost to hire a professional grant writer. Many local professionals and contractors have also pledged their time and support. So what's next? With the District of Tofino's guidance, our group of locals and committed donors want to find the perfect location for the Tofino Pavilion. We are asking the district to confirm they will pursue the project and establish a final location. With this partnership, the community will be able to aggressively pursue private donors and apply for grant opportunities now. This is a grassroots, community-led, and community-supported project. We will need to work together to make this project a reality. Akin to an old-fashioned barn-raising event, together we are stronger. Together we can ensure generations of memories to come. Let's get this roof raised. Thank you again for providing us the time to present. We have lots more information available, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
Great, thank you. Would it be possible to take off the screen share at this point?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jennifer. I appreciate very much, as you know, I've been involved for a long time in bringing recreational opportunities to the coast, and a wonderful presentation. And I'd like to open it up to the rest of council for questions for you at this point. Councillor Chalmers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation. It's exciting to see the work that's gone into it. I have a couple questions, but I'll just start with that. How will the usage be managed when it's open amongst various groups that are interested in using it?
So we anticipate that the use it would be through Parks and Recreation, that it would be managed through the District of Tofino. We do hope that the structure remains open and open for public use when it isn't when it isn't reserved.
Okay.
But overall, the district would be in charge.
And then did you have any sort of budgeted operating cost?
So we did look into the 2015 recreation feasibility study. And in that one, the indoor facility that was proposed at that time had an operation cost of $68,000 a year. And that was for an indoor space and a much larger facility. So if we took kind of those numbers and estimated about half of that, maybe looking at about $35,000 per year for operating. Again, this would have a full solar system. So in terms of utilities, you'd have less usage.
And then if it's okay if I ask one more question before I leave for another councillor, I think this one's more to staff. I don't know who would be the right person to ask, but possibly for the grant that was being talked about, the healthy communities, do we have anything out there that might be competing with this? It's never good to compete against your own grants. And that question doesn't need to be answered right now, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any application we're making in that stream at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor McMaster.
Yeah, I'm happy to support this concept. My number one concern is having the concrete floor, having played a lot of sport and seen a lot of injuries on concrete floor. So I wondered how much it would escalate the cost to put in the alternative surface you were talking about.
Yeah, so we have estimated those to be, it could be an additional 30,000 to get that playing surface installed, give or take, but.
I often find that concrete floors in damp climates tend to get pretty slippy.
Yeah, it has been.
Go ahead.
Oh, it has been one of the main points all the recreation programs bring up. So I think it would be an important thing to involve in the project.
Okay. My second question is the size you're proposing being dictated by the space available at the community hall? Because I personally would like to get as big a facility as we can afford.
Yeah, we ended up, the project actually started as a concept to cover the ball hockey rink at the Wickaninnish Community School. And the sizing was based off of that available location. So the project is easily sizable to whichever location it ends up landing on. But I would say enlarging it offers a lot of different potential. Lacrosse is something that I know is another important recreation game, as well as indoor soccer. And to size it up to something around 200 feet by 90 feet, you would be able to include all of those programming. So it would be a big sell.
Yeah, I would certainly like to see those alternatives considered, because I really think we should be equipping the youth of today to take the skills and sports elsewhere in the world. I'd like to see us get as big as possible, or what we can afford, and look at the alternative flooring. But I'm happy to support the concept. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Law, then Councillor Anderson, and then Councillor Thick.
Yeah, I'm excited about the proposal. I think it's been talked about for quite a while. A couple questions. One is the placement. I think I know that the Wickaninnish Community School had been talking about their land, and I know there's other possible options as well. And my only concern is that taking that hilltop off there could impact other besides the environmental issues up there, taking the forest down, but also competing possibly with the further larger or an indoor facility if it comes to that. So have you looked at other options? Have you discussed that with staff, district staff, or the Wickaninnish Community School, or even other partners?
Yeah, we did we have discussed with the district staff some possible options, all just discussions, none that really stood out besides kind of the community hall as a space that can fit it. We did have discussions with the Wickaninnish Community School. I think there are a few constraints. One, that possibly they may expand at some point in the next 10 years. So that location in particular might not be the best long-term solution. Another goal of ours is that the space is is totally open for public use and would have no restrictions besides when it's being programmed for actual events. And that's not as possible on a school grounds to have kind of open, free community access. And, you know, that is one of our a few of the important points to this project, is to keep it open to the community.
So I just have a follow-up question here, Councillor Stere, that's all right, just about the design. So yes, I support, do have questions about the placement and design. I got to concur with Councillor McMaster on the surface, as playing sports on concrete is very hard. Although we have, you know, a paved tennis court. But the other thing is that it's very dark under that, and it'd be great if there was some more skylights in your design. And I just want, the question would be, how set are you with the particulars of your design, and are you open to suggestions about, you know, like that suggestion of, can you triple the skylights or something like that?
Yes, definitely. So when we proposed the project, we placed it at the school grounds, and we did a light study to make sure there was no shading on the surface, and you know, anything that would deter from the surface usage during games. So we had minimized the skylights because there's such a strong southern exposure on that one side. But in a different location, I think increasing the opaque panels would be very smart design decision. And I'm, you know, I've created this in tandem with a bunch of community members, and there's no design rights to it. It's for the community. So if we need to add more solar opaque panels, we can do that.
Thanks so much for this presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I believe I had Councillor Anderson and then Councillor Thick after.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. It's a really exciting idea, and I'm really interested in getting behind this. And I'm glad to see things come out of the community and for council to get behind them. I guess some of the details I'm interested in are around design as well. I'm just wondering about equipment storage or washrooms, things like that. Have those been considered already? Or are they in the design and I sort of looked at it too quickly? And it's maybe when you're speaking to that, when we went through the process of designing the indoor facility, we went out to the community and tried to determine some of the needs and things that would go into that building. So I'm just wondering how much consultation and thought has been given to those aspects of design.
Yeah, so the initial question, we did design in a storage facility at the back that would be conditioned, so it would be heated and ventilated to make sure, you know, the storage of equipment didn't get moldy. And we have not designed in washrooms. Again, one of our focuses has been something that is feasible and attainable right now. So focusing on getting that structure up and getting the recreation programming going. We do acknowledge washrooms would be an issue in many of the locations. Another benefit of the community hall location is we do have access to those washrooms right off the bat. And then maybe it's something to be done in the future to install some additional exterior bathrooms. But that is something that we acknowledge is not included in the designs, but you know, could be something to be added in the future. And we did do, so to answer your second question, we did look into a lot of the feasibility reports for the recreation programming for the indoor recreation facility. We also have discussed with the Parks and Recreation Commission. And we have reached out to a bunch of different groups, and we really want to continue that process. So the designs aren't set in stone, and you know, we don't, we want to keep this as simple as possible, but we want to also make sure to include as many event types and recreation types that we can. And, you know, I agree with Councillor McMaster that if we can size it up slightly and include even more, that would just be a positive thing.
Yep. I've been around when we did the community hall, and it certainly had some shortcomings that we've had to, you know, build on and add on, and we still have some hopes and dreams to complete some of the ideas around that building to make it fully utilized. And so that's always a bit of a concern when we go into a project, that it's going to be embraced and fully used and fully functional. But yeah, I think where we're at is a good place. I guess my other questions are for staff around this sort of the deadline of sort of getting a grant in on time is really short. And so sort of my questions would be around, you know, what sort of decisions have to be taken by council and how quickly to meet that deadline. So that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Thick.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. That is a wonderful presentation. And as others have said before me, I'm really excited about what the idea you're bringing forward on behalf of so many others. And I, for one, fully support this. And I have spoken with most of the members at the Rec Commission, and I think that they all feel the same. It came to the last meeting, and certainly there was a lot of enthusiasm, and I think yeah, most people have been working toward this for a long time. And I do think it is a potential Made in Tofino solution. As someone who has actually taught in a very similar facility for 3 years, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think it is actually a very good, it's not perfect, but I think it's what we can do and what we can afford. And I similarly like the idea of the location being at the community hall, the current community hall site. I think, as you said, it adds to it, but also in light of the fact that we may see very soon the affordable housing just around the corner from that, to me, this makes perfect sense. So from that point of view, and I just know from talking to other people with youth, you know, that 6 to 15 age group is 6 to 18 age group is really lacking for facilities. So I think this is a huge boon to providing some opportunities, recreation and meeting places, a meeting place for them. I think that's a wonderful idea too. One comment I had when I showed it to somebody who was just thinking about the southeast facing side of we may need to consider some more sheltering on that side because of the way the rain falls here. So that was my only, but I do echo Councillor McMaster and other comments where I think that this, I don't know what you call it, the multi-sport surface, is it? Would be a huge boon. I don't know, maybe with the roller derby that might not be perfect for them. So if we add something, we might take something else away. So, and just one last thing in terms of the funding idea, and I've mentioned this before, but the CPT, you know, is a Community Foundation of Canada member, and it is maybe a good placeholder for a fund that could capture these different, you know, if we're going to leverage the funds that we have and look for more funds, it may be a place that we could hold the funds in for this facility. So just to conclude, I think it's wonderful, and I really appreciate your work and all the others that came behind you to make it happen to this point. So I look forward to, I don't know what we have to do now, but I would like to look forward to putting in an application if that was the will of council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thick. Councillor Challenger.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation. And I was really excited to hear about this. I see so much potential in it for sure, and also I'm in support. Most of the questions I wrote down were asked by the other council members, so I don't have much new to ask, but I did, as far as process goes and applying for the grant, is there, and this is more of a question to staff about needing to have community consultation first. Is that necessary before, or maybe that's even already happened before we go ahead and apply for a grant for this? And similar to what Mayor Law said, although I actually just took a walk on the Tonquin Trail Network last night, was passing by the community hall and thought how great of a spot that would be, but also have some concerns about of competing with other projects in the future, and if that's a consideration. So just as far as process goes, what type of consultation is necessary before we go ahead with this short timeline? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Challenger. Is there anything else? Otherwise, I'll weigh in my 2 cents at this point, maybe. And first of all, thank you, Jennifer, very much. And very supportive of anything that is going to bring, those increased recreational opportunities to the coast. And, there's a lot of detail, obviously, to have discussion. I think some of the early discussions around location and probably an appropriate time and place is now with district staff. And we've certainly had lots of conversations about location for facilities. And I know that you've engaged SD70 in those conversations around that property, SD70 property. And I know there's future expansion. They do have a sizable piece of land there. And I do appreciate the constraints around the extracurricular times when that facility might be able to use in conjunction with SD70. I do think it would be appropriate to have those talks with district staff who have spent quite a bit of time on the on location, and I'm very supportive of the project, but to make sure that we're nailing the appropriate place for it from a variety of factors. One of the first things that comes quickly to mind about the location, just in terms of timing at the community hall, which I quite like, but we've also are in the process of a wastewater treatment plant, and there may be there are some works that might be in conflict in terms of construction if your project was to proceed. So there is some timing possibilities that may be involved with in potential conflict with the wastewater treatment plant construction. So those are some of the location questions that may come forward. And then, of course, the financing end of things is going to be something that the community will be. I know there is great support. We've gone out in the past for an indoor facility, so I know there's great support. And at the time where the community was even at one point would have been asked to borrow money to build a facility. So there are a variety of options, but one of the interesting things, there is a multiplex being proposed for out on ACRD lands. And the multiplex themselves had, the society had committed to raising all of the capital costs for that project. And I know in a project such as this, with great community and grassroots support, where there may be understanding what the commitment from that end is, what commitments the district could be able to bring forward in terms of the financing, and where that leveraging might be possible through those grant applications and what have you. So those are a couple of the considerations that come to mind to myself. But I just wanted to thank you very much once again for bringing this forward. And I don't know, I might consult quickly with staff, and I don't know if the manager of community sustainability or the CAO, in terms of, this is a committee of the whole, so we don't really make those larger decisions. And I would maybe consult quickly with them as to what would be the best way forward. I know location is the first one that comes, and then the grant application time frame is very tight. So I see Bob has, Mr. McPherson has clicked on. So Bob, maybe if you could comment on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that probably a good next step would be a report from staff to kind of outline a bit of a process, and I don't want to sort of dampen everybody's enthusiasm, but I think we're maybe a couple of steps ahead of where I would feel comfortable applying for a grant. So I've heard from council some design ideas tonight, And I think probably in my mind, the first step is, as you said, Councillor Stere, nail down a location, nail down a design that we're all good with, get that design costed, and then start looking for money, because going to the provincial government and saying we've got an idea and we'd like some money now is challenging. If we have a well-developed design and we've gone and developed costing that's defensible on it, we're in a much better position to get money, not only in trying to raise that money from the public sector, but also trying to get money from the private sector. So there might be a few steps that I think that staff could outline for council. And the other thing that I think was identified earlier is, and not to get too much swimming in the waters of sunk cost fallacy, but we've prepared a design that's for this location for an indoor facility that we then have to set aside. And if we are going to have an indoor facility in this community at some point in time, we have to redesign and find another location. And that's a decision that I think council wants to make really consciously. Or is there another location for the facility that these folks have brought forward today? So I would like it if council could, committee of the whole could recommend to council this be referred to staff, and we can get something back to you to describe process.
Great, thank you, Mr. McPherson. Yeah, I think there are, as you say, several steps before we can move to there, and so I can, from the chair, make a motion to refer to staff to recommend an appropriate process for moving forward with the Tofino Pavilion project. Would that be appropriate enough, Bob? Would that capture it? Great. I'll make. Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. All in favor? Great. Thank you. Jennifer, once again, appreciate the time and energy that the group has put in. I know it's been extensive, and really thank the community from bringing this from the grassroots forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the time. It was a pleasure to present. Have a good evening. Great.
That brings us to, I just saw a couple of hands go up. Mayor Law, did you have? No, okay. Brings us to correspondence. I don't believe there was any on the agenda. Nikki, is that true? Is there any correspondence that I may have missed?
Thank you, Chair. No correspondence.
Great, thank you. And so we move into presentations. We have an invited presentation today from Faye Misser, Community Developer of Coastal Family Resource Coalition, and Dr. Carrie Marshall regarding West Coast Harm Reduction Committee. And this was an invitation that we had sent out to have them bring us up to speed on what is happening in our communities. And I see Faye is on board. So welcome, Faye. And this is an invited delegation. So this is a time, I don't know, I don't think we have time frames on the invited ones. I could be wrong, but as it stands, it is okay, 1-5. So if we do need to go, we'll give a heads up when we're getting close, but that does not include question and answer time. So that would be awesome. Thank you and welcome.
Through the chair, we do have a 15-minute window for invited presentations.
Great, 15 minutes it is then.
Okay, thank you for having us. Carrie, are you okay if I just launch into my little PowerPoint and then you can just jump in? Okay, excellent. So I'll share screen now. Hopefully this works. Does that look like a PowerPoint presentation to everyone?
It sure does.
Great, excellent. Okay, well, thank you. My name is Faye Misser. I'm a lifetime resident of Iqaluit, and I'm also the community developer for the Coastal Family Resource Coalition, or more commonly known just as the Coalition. And I'm here with Dr. Carrie Marshall to talk about our local harm reduction priorities and the work to date of the harm reduction working group of the Coalition. So thank you for the invitation. Here we go. So quick background, the Coalition is a regional interdisciplinary network of health and social service providers that work to develop capacity in addressing the needs of children, youth, families, and communities on the West Coast. Our main goal is to improve communications between the different service providers, agencies, communities, and funding agencies. And our overall goal is to improve the health in the communities. It was formed in the early 2000s in response to provincial funding cuts made to almost all human service sectors and the reduction of services, particularly in the West Coast. there was like some fear around competition. So instead they banded together and formed the coalition to increase communications and collaborations. We hold monthly meetings, normally in rotating communities, all 9 on the West Coast, but obviously we're meeting on Zoom right now. Yeah, and then next slide, here we go. You might also recognize me from the Tla-o-qui-aht Biosphere Trust, the local community foundation. I'm the program coordinator there as well. And in 2017, after providing, being one of the funders for the coalition, there was a request for the CPT to be the administrative and financial host for the coalition. And then, yeah, that's how I got into this role. Yeah, we have a lot of shared goals, normally around, typically around sustainable development and community health. So it made sense to start this relationship. And then we have the coalition, other than our monthly meetings, which sees around 30 people attending. We also have several working groups, harm reduction being one of them. And it was established in 2017 in response to the provincial overdose crisis, which at our last meeting, we got an update from our Island Health Harm Reduction Coordinator that the language is being changed to a toxic drug supply crisis. So our early meetings focus mostly on our regional overdose risk, being prepared at the community level and what the needs were, making sure naloxone was readily available in every community, and supporting with education and training between different levels of so different social and health providers, as well as to businesses and schools. The working group itself is very dynamic. It's open. It's an open membership to anyone at the coalition that provides harm reduction or public health type service. Right now, we have great representation from Island Health, Nectar Tribal Council, the Mental Health and Substance Use, the Community Paramedic Program, first responders, physicians, such as Carrie, hospital staff, the Nectar Health Leads, nonprofits, and now a new community member with lived experience. Here's a quick poster. It's an example of some of the early work to start spreading the word to community members as to where you can receive a free naloxone kit and training. And then in 2018, the focus of the working group shifted and more to a broader view on harm reduction as a whole. And as defined by HealthLink BC, harm reduction is a public health approach that aims to reduce harms related to substance use. It includes many options and approaches, and the main principle is that it meets people wherever they're at in their substance use journey. The harm reduction strategies and services can lessen the consequences associated with substance use. It may include access to safer sex and safer substance use supplies and or take-home naloxone. It also can involve outreach and support programs and referrals to health and support services. It's non-judgmental and available and open to everyone. Harm reduction treats people with respect. It helps people connect with others and develop healthy relationships. Yeah, and a common myth is that harm reduction activities such as a needle exchange or safe consumption sites encourage substance use, but they don't. It actually just encourages access to services, including treatment and a safe supply. And again, in 2018, as our focus broadened more, we started talking about different types of priorities at the harm reduction table, and this was being echoed at other big regional meetings, one of which was the Substance Use Summit, which was hosted in the spring of 2018 by the Long Beach chapter of Rural and Remote Divisions of Family Practice, where alcohol was identified as a top substance use of concern. Since then, these are the most commonly identified priorities that have come up at our meetings. We meet, sorry, I should have said this earlier, around 3 to 4 times a year or more if we need to. Alcohol the need has been drilled down further into the need for a local sobering assessment site and at-home detox program. Also, harm reduction education and supports for youth. There are quite a high number of youth who use substance uses in the region, but broader than that too, sexual consent, safe sex, safer parties, workshops, and those are actually we just organized a collaborative approach with a few different youth mental health providers with experience in harm reduction to be doing those workshops at the local high school this spring before school end, right in time for summer. Also a peer-to-peer approach. So this is a evidence-based approach that's really pitched in public health, is the use of non-health professionals in strategies around substance use. Another big issue that we're actually doing a needs assessment on right now with Coalition is emergency or crisis housing for youth. And that also involves some wraparound harm reduction supports. And then a really recent priority that was brought up at our last harm reduction meeting earlier this month was access to funding for transportation for clients to actually get to treatment outside of our region, typically through their services, or say like a funder like First Nations Health Authority or NTC. It's apparently can take months to get approval for funding, leaving some workers to just pay out of pocket and wait for that reimbursement. But as you may know, when someone's ready to receive treatment, you must act in haste and act quickly. And then I just wanted to briefly talk about the role of municipalities. So the risk of substance use goes beyond the individual to the families and the community at large, causing an array of social harms and related financial costs to the community. So from a socioeconomic perspective, it makes perfect sense for municipalities to support harm reduction services and strategies in their community. I understand that you have or are in the process of creating a municipal alcohol policy. I believe that happened while I was on maternity leave. If true, this is a fine example of how creating a healthy public policy will positively influence the creation of a healthy community. Yeah, and so I just wanted to, again, thanks for the opportunity to come and talk about the work that we're doing at this table, and then the priorities are changing with as different needs are popping up. Alcohol still is prevailing as a really persistent top concern, and I think this is a good time to pass the baton on over to Carrie to elaborate and fill in gaps if possible. But also thank you for having me. I don't want to hog all the time, Carrie.
What's that?
I said I don't want to hog all the time, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Faye. I just wanted to add just a couple of things. So in general, we hear lots of things about harm reduction. That almost always comes out in the context of opioid use. And I don't want to undermine and say that we have no opioid use on the coast. We do have a significant amount of opioid use traditionally, though, that has been in prescribed prescription opioids. I don't have the numbers on that, so that's somewhat anecdotal. But there is some harm reduction or safety in having prescription drugs rather than street supply. We have very little street opioids. And we have not seen a lot of consequences of that, which is great. Most of the overdoses that we have seen on the coast have been inadvertent or unlabeled or the use of prescription medications in ways that they shouldn't be used. However, I will say, I think we can anticipate with the summer. Last summer, we had much busier summer in terms of overdose and drug use than we are used to. I think that this, correlated obviously with lots of things that we saw with COVID. And so I want people to be aware of that. However, any conversation around harm reduction and sort of capitalizing on the opioid crisis, I think we have tried through our organizations with FAE and the divisions and other advocacy groups to really just try to bring the needle back to alcohol use and the focus on alcohol use. I don't think I've been to a physician meeting last almost 10 years here that was not at the top of everybody's priority list. And then through lots of other organizations and meetings that we've started, we have a multi-agency meeting with police and BC Ambulance that we meet once a month. It is continuously at the top of everyone's list. And I would say the past 6 months, in particular, COVID, it has escalated to things that I've never seen before. Young people dying literally from consumption, just straight alcohol consumption at 30 years old. There's been just a massive amount of tragedy around alcohol use during COVID. So I guess my plight is to just think broadly about this as a public health issues and a community issue, what the role is of the municipality in this. I know a number of us have been working with Elise on a municipal alcohol policy, which is just one part of it. Harm reduction strategies in the context of alcohol are much more complicated and multifaceted, I think, than they are for opioid use, but extends everything from safe places to drink, transportation, the culture set by policies, by the municipality and by groups in the community. I think the traditional example of this was the use of alcohol as a fundraiser for kids' recreation, and what the sort of disconnect or discordance between having your hospital and first responders staff feeling at times overwhelmed and really grief-stricken, to be honest, with the amount of alcohol use, and then having a policy that is using the sale of that to support kids groups. So I think there's a lot of work that we've been working on. It is a lot of work. Again, COVID has been somewhat of a blessing in that way with the concurrent crisis with opioids, because we've really managed to harness some of that attention and energy that's been put into harm reduction in general. There are some big announcements coming that I think aren't publicly released yet, but we've managed to secure some of these asks that we've been asking for. At the end of the day, when it's at the top of all of your healthcare first responders lists of top concerns, I know the medical health officer, Dr. Benyusik, and Dr. Hasselback before that in their presentations would put it at the top. And to have little to no resources here on the West Coast, no brain assessment, no detox, no long-term treatment, no managed alcohol program, no home detox. We have one substance use counselor that was hired in July under the context of harm reduction through opioid use. So there is just, as Tom knows, I like to bang drum every chance that I get, that the gap between resources and impact on our communities is extraordinary. So just like to take the opportunity to put that out there in every with every platform that I can.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall and Faye. Very much appreciated. I'd like to open it up to council. If there are questions in general, broadly or specific to some of the harm reduction. Is there anyone? I know I'm going to have a bunch, so is there anyone that has any questions for Dr. Marshall or Faye? Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'm glad to see the dedication of those working towards harm reduction and especially around alcohol. I think one of the things about Tofino, having lived here for a long time, is that there's been a real culture of drinking, and I think at one time it was a favorite stop for fishing boats, and I think it comes right out of that and sort of transferred into the tourism hospitality economy quite easily. I guess my question is, what sort of things might we do, or what comparisons have been made with other resort type communities? Because I really see that industry, both with the workers and also that the fact that people come here to holiday and to have a good time. It sort of drives that whole perception of being kind of a place to party. And I don't know if that's true or not, or if there's any lens that we could put on that to sort of change things. And I don't know if that's exactly the area of focus that that you've had in the past, but I'm wondering if you could speak to any of that kind of thing. What could we, what, if anything, can we do, and what comparisons can we look, what other communities can we look towards to try and change that drinking culture in Tofino? So, yeah. Maybe there's no answers to that, but those are my questions.
We have a great a solution now. I can say you're correct. As tourism industries develop, so does the drinking culture. There's a lot of evidence that backs that up, and so does drinking for the younger population, more access through working in the hospitality sector as well. So it's as tourism grows and is blossoming, and not more than blossoming in Tofino, it's certainly something you want to be keeping in mind. I know at least the last request for a liquor license for a resort was declined, correct, by the mayor and council. That's a great first step. I think what I'm noticing at more of like a national, I guess, or an even international level with public health is a lot of talk about the harms associated with alcohol and the risks being. So I think maybe the stigma, I don't know, Carrie, you could jump in, but like the smoking, the campaign to ban smoking and to not ban smoking, but to reduce smoking was really successful. And I'm not sure if I just feel like there's a lot of building momentum around changing the idea and the culture around drinking. Hopefully that will trickle down somewhere like Tofino, but do you know of any other municipality models around alcohol, Carrie?
I think we had quite a lot of great meetings with Elise, and some of that, I don't know where the municipal alcohol policy landed. It might have gotten skewed a bit by COVID, but part of it, it's a really tricky thing to navigate because you don't want to stigmatize people that use. And the general, there is the general culture of, especially in places like here, people are on vacation, is that they want more liberal alcohol laws, not stronger. And so municipalities and government in a place of contradiction with that culture, that I think that can be really challenging. But the thing to remember is that increased accessibility to alcohol always increases use. And so I think that's where policies and procedures can come into place. And there's the negative part of that is perceived by the district. I know when we were talking about the municipal alcohol policy about, the district being the kind of fun blockers. So there's the negative part of restricting access, but there is also, I think, what is really undermined or underutilized is the promotion of family friendly. You're not taking something away from somebody, but you're trying to promote events that alcohol doesn't have to be at the center or core to it, is one of the ways to help change culture. You also don't want to push people using alcohol into their homes and into places that they're not visible and that they may be using even more unhealthily, I guess, for lack of a better word. So this is a really hard thing to navigate, but again, I think you are setting the tone through your policy. It doesn't have to be just about it's not about prohibition necessarily, but the spirit of inclusion. Lots of people want to go to family events that if alcohol is there, they may access it, but if alcohol is not there, that's not something that's going to keep them going to that event. So that's one thing that we came across, is trying to shift some of the optics of it from a prohibitive sort of thing to actually a promotion of healthy communities, which has a lot of traction here. I mean, again, it's just That's just one small part of it.
I just wanted to say we did adopt the municipal alcohol policy, and a lot of the emphasis on it was from a community health perspective, was not in that prohibitionist or in that punitive sort of aspect. It was looking at the overall health of communities, and exactly those comments around inclusion and the ability to create those types of spaces that don't necessarily reflect the use of alcohol to have a good time. And that was part of the small part of that cultural shift. Thank you. Anybody else with any comment or question? I'll go Councillor Challenger and then Councillor Thick after.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Faye and Carrie. And I'm not actually really familiar with the municipal alcohol policy yet, so I can certainly do my own research and look into that. But in general, is that to mostly guide the way that events and permits and that are given out, or is there a lot more to it? Maybe I could just get a little bit of a brief further understanding of that.
I could take that on unless I know our manager of corporate services, Nikki Best, is new to the profile, and her predecessor was very much a part of that process. I don't know, Nikki, if you wanted to touch on that, and if there's any gaps I could fill in if there was anything missed.
Thank you, Chair Stere. Just to clarify, it is a municipal alcohol policy, was adopted earlier this year. It applies to public events occurring on municipal property, which have applied to serve alcohol under the process governed by the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. So in that policy, there's some foundational principles about community health and safety, engagement and support, inclusivity. And the policy does outline specific things like event signage, safe transportation, no last call, drink ticket stations, separate stations for alcohol service and non-alcoholic drinks. So it does cover quite a breadth of topics. So if everyone would like, I can be happy to send this out or provide a link in the minutes to this meeting.
Thanks. May I ask a follow-up question? Great, thanks for that. That's really helpful. And yeah, I'll definitely look into that once we have the links sent. So from your perspective in the coalition, is that a way you're continuing to kind of enforce this policy, the best way in supporting the goals of the coalition, or are there other ways as a municipality that we can be of further support?
The coalition has fairly active participation through your rec department on the general coalition, as well as the children and youth working group. And yeah, so it's a network, and our main goal is to communicate and identify health priorities, and then seed them up and help them grow with these working groups. And then, so you may be asked, or staff may be asked, to sit on certain groups and tables as we're working on issues collaboratively. So that's one way to get like further involved. And like planners are welcome to attend. We've had planners from District of Tofino attend the coalition meeting as well, just to keep up to date with regional community health issues and be part of the conversation. Kind of like get what you put into the coalition. I'd say some meetings you're like, oh, that wasn't really relevant to anything I do, because we're all talking about this priority right now, housing, let's say, and then other meetings you're like, whoa, I got a lot out of that. I got a lot of people to follow up with. So you can.
I would also add, I think it's really important that leadership understands the concepts of harm reduction, because there are certainly a lot of misconceptions about them. And again, I think society is starting to understand them in the context of opioids, but again, harm reduction in alcohol is much less fleshed out than it is for other issues. And just circling back to the awareness around that, because, people, again, you are up against the cultural push to want to move to lax drinking laws like in Europe, and kind of things, when our actual the misuse of alcohol is just an entirely different drinking pattern than they have in Europe, and does not, those laws do not support, would not be supportive of where we are here on the coast or in Canada in general.
Thank you. And just to follow up with that as well, Councillor Challenger, we, as a district representative to the ACRD, we also sit on the regional hospital board. And often at those meetings, I converse with Dr. Marshall and bring forward those regional concerns, and specifically in our case with the Tofino General Hospital. And a lot of those issues do center around the services, harm reduction and otherwise, that are often related directly to alcohol and alcohol use. So we can advocate from that level to the board to bring that awareness, but also to bring resources. And as Dr. Marshall has pointed out earlier, there are certainly facilities that are desperately needed at our hospital, such as a sobering and assessment center that, to be quite frank, and I'm sure Dr. Marshall could elaborate on how it very much overwhelms a lot of the staff that are there trying to do not only that particular amount of work, but also their regular duties. So there is actions that regionally that are moving forward. And with the district supporting things like a municipal alcohol policy and creating that culture through policy, those are the steps that you know, in the last couple of years on council that we've been moving forward with. So that's just a slight follow-up. Thank you. Councillor Thick, did you have some comment or questions?
Just to say thank you. I think that you're both a great duo. I somebody who is so involved and dedicated toward policy, and someone who's so dedicated toward their profession of medicine. So thank you very much. And I just want to say thank you, and please keep speaking these words of truth to us, because we are often overwhelmed with so many things coming at us, but your words are so important. And just naming those things and giving us words, the no home detox that you spoke to, Dr. Marshall, and just, it really helps us to understand what the gaps are, and your words about the difference between what's available to us, what we have, and the gaps in the resources, I think was the word you used. I really appreciate you naming the problem, and you're coming to us often at your own, on your own time, because it's something that you're very passionate about. And I just want to say a big thank you.
Mayor Law, did you have a comment or question?
I just had a quick comment and then a question for Dr. Marshall and maybe Ms. Sarah as well. Is we're shortly going to prepare our Union of British Columbia Municipalities, UBCM. We'll get a chance to meet with some of the ministers, and I'd already actually was penning. Earlier, I was penning some comments that I wanted to deal with, because we do know that alcohol is probably the largest issue with drugs and substance in our communities. And during COVID, I do know the province took great pains to relax alcohol laws and expand permits in our community. And so, somewhat. Opposition to our own, municipal alcohol policy, the net result is a permanent increase in access to alcohol in our community. And I was going to bring that up, or I'd planned to bring that up, and say, look, if the province is going to do that, then the province should also kick in for funding for the results of that, which are going to be, as you know, health, mental health, and also criminal activity. So from your perspective, I got a quick list about what could you see us lobbying the province for specifically this fall?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I mean, again, it's such a vast desert of resources here. You could pick almost anything. And we would appreciate it. What we've identified for a few years now, as Faye talked about, we had a summit in 2018, and this, I think it's definitely needs to be mentioned that this was a collaborative summit with first responders as well as First Nation community leadership, and is just resounding alcohol. And so what, as service providers, has been at the top of our priority list is a sobering and assessment center. And so some of this, all the words kind of probably sound the same, but sobering and assessment is that initial, when somebody is acutely intoxicated and they're on the street, or they've, they're at the beach or wherever they might be. The current options for being intoxicated in public are either jail or hospital. And we've worked a lot with the police to get the police to bring almost everybody to the hospital instead of going to cells, because that is just inherently very unsafe. The downside of that is that, as you guys know, we're a very busy hospital that's getting busier every year. And sometimes, especially through the course of the summer, we have the entire emergency room, 4 or 5 beds with people that are acutely intoxicated that don't necessarily need medical care, but there's no other place for them. And so that has its sort of ripple effect on hospital resources. So most other communities, including Port Alberni and the North Island, Campbell River, have things called sobering assessment centers, which are safe, dry spaces, food, showers, and have some medical staff and supervision that actually keep people out of acute care and keep them out of cells, which is, again, not a safe or compassionate place for people to be. So that has been one of our first asks because of the significant impact on resources to ourselves, BC Ambulance and police, which somebody drunk in public requires all 3 of those services usually. So that's just one thing. Another one would be detox. So that's sort of the next step. So somebody decides that the other part about sobering and assessment is the assessment part is then that person's engaging in care. So there's the opportunity for healthcare providers, mental health counselors, to social work to engage with that person and see what other services they may need. Detox is the actual medical process of coming off of alcohol. Many patients with long-term alcohol use need to do that under medical supervision. That is a service that we have tried our best to provide at the hospital. I will say in last year, sometimes 5 or 6 beds out of a 10-bed hospital are being used to detox patients, which also has its ripple effect in terms of being able to provide care for other people. So those are huge facility-based asks. But again, the list goes on. Sometimes there's some detox you can do at home. There's also the need for long-term treatment, 3 months of treatment. Often what you have if you send people away for treatment to come back to the community. And once they come back, because they have not been going through treatment within the community with the same triggers, they go back to alcohol. Anyway, the list goes on, but I think, just from a municipal leadership perspective, just being aware of the gaps and the strain that it puts on ourselves, police, BC Ambulance, and then of course, it tears it. It's not just about the individual; it's their family, the community, the culture, their accidents, and the vast impact that it can have on all of those levels of society. Like I said, you guys pick one.
Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up there, Mayor Law? Or?
No, just I could say thanks and follow along with Councillor Thick. Thank you very much. It's a big deal, and you're doing a great job.
Great, thank you. And I'll just close by thanking you once again. The incredible group of service providers that the coalition represents, and the important role of that coordination and bringing those resources to those in our community that definitely benefit from them. And I can speak from many people that those services and that the ability of the coalition to bring those forward have been incredibly important for our community. And I want to thank you for coming to council to keep us informed of this. I do want to point out that many of the issues, and specifically alcohol, where these are not just the community of Tofino, these are broad regional issues that impact not just the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, but the province, and I would say the country in general. But in our particular region, and it's not just the face of the person that you may think. This affects a broad range of people within our communities that you may not see or understand that. And so I want to thank you once again for bringing that forward to council, to bringing that awareness to the group. And I'm sure there will be an invitation in the future as well. So thank you once again. So that brings us to the next part of our agenda with unfinished business. And I believe there is no unfinished business to be spoken about. Ms. Best, is there any questions in the quorum to be asked of our group today?
Thank you, Chair. There are no question and answers, and I believe we only have one attendee who was a previous presenter, so there's no one here to ask questions.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. With that then, could I have someone move adjournment today? Unless I'm missing something. If not, was that Councillor Master move adjournment and seconded by everybody and all in favor? Great.